This is a brief history of revocable living trusts. We're going to talk a little bit about the origins and why this is something that we offer and believe that you should educate your clients about. So, the concept of a trust comes from Roman law and was first developed in the 12th and 13th centuries in England. The original use was to prevent the king from making accusations against a nobleman for the purpose of confiscating that nobleman's property. And noblemen used what was called an inter vivos or living trust, and inter vivos being living from the Latin term, which is why it comes from Roman law, so that they could protect their assets from being confiscated by the king, ensuring that their families would still have property, even if they lost their lands, their lives, or their head. The first revocable living trust in the United States was created by Francis Fauquier, Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, in 1765. As the king's representative in the colony of Virginia, he decided that he wanted to ensure that his family would not have to suffer through probate or possibly have his assets confiscated. And so he took the advice of his attorney, a man by the name of Patrick Henry, and created the first revocable living trust in what we now know as the United States of America. So to recap, the first trust in the United States was created in the Virginia colony. It was created by Patrick Henry, and it was created for this guy, Lord Fauquier, not this guy, Lord Farquaad. And that brings us to the modern use of revocable living trusts. Trusts have become much more commonplace as an estate planning tool. Not in a vacuum, not just, hey, everybody should have one, even though Susie Orman has espoused that everyone should have one, but it's to avoid the perils of probate for the family that was left behind. And it became really popular when this book, The Living Trust, was first published in 1989 by a gentleman by the name of Henry W. Abst III. And he said that people are realizing that living trust may be the right way for their estates to avoid confiscation, not by a king, but by the government and probate attorneys. And the three reasons that he listed for creating a revocable living trust was to avoid probate, managing incapacity, and that it was flexible and private. And that brings us to this guy, who in 1991 met Henry W. Abst III, and that's me actually, in 1991. And I began doing estate planning seminars. Now, why were estate planning seminars and revocable living trusts so popular in 1991? Well, in this country, there is something called the estate tax. And in that code section of the law, there is something that is called the unified credit. And that's the amount of your estate that was exempt from estate taxes. Today, it is $12.5 million per person, $25 million per couple. In 1991, it was $500,000. So $500,000 a piece, $1 million per couple. And if a couple didn't divide their property, $500,000 for me and $500,000 for you, when the first spouse died, the second spouse would own $1 million. And half of that would have been subject to estate taxes. But in a revocable living trust, you could create two buckets, one for the husband and one for the spouse, or an A-B trust. And when people would say, well, what's the A part and the B part? The A part is the above ground spouse, and the B part was the below ground spouse. And that was a way to ensure that both spouses got their $500,000 exemption from estate taxes. Over time, we know that the unified credit increased and increased dramatically to where now a revocable living trust is not an effective estate planning vehicle unless someone has more than $25 million in assets. And in 2001, a company called LegalZoom was founded, which made creating legal documents something that anyone could do on their own. So, can someone create a revocable living trust on their own? Yes. Is it legal? Yes. Can you help someone use a software program that you own and guide them through the process of setting up their own revocable living trust? Yes, you can. That is not deemed to be the practice of law. You are not creating the trust. You are not drafting the documents. You're simply guiding someone through a process where they fill in the blanks. In 2012, Estate Docs Pro was created, and that is the software program that we use to help people create revocable living trusts today. Do not sell them. You help people, guiding them through the process to create their own document. Are there pluses and minuses of a do-it-yourself approach? If someone has a really complex estate, do-it-yourself approach might not be the best. If someone has a scenario where they have a dramatically blended family and they want to have different things, go to different people and different treatments and different this and different that, probably not a good thing either. So the more complicated or complex something gets, it might not be something that would be suitable for you to guide someone through the process. Now, when we get to the software and walk through that with you, you'll see where there are places where if somebody asks a question, there are answers. But a great rule of thumb for you should be, if people are asking lots and lots of legal questions, that's not your place to do all of those answering. So educate them on what estate planning is, what's available, and then show them how easy it is to create their own living trust. And if you want, you can now explain to them a little bit about the history of a revocable living trust.